Sir, I started. Is that indication being seen, sir?
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. At the end, maybe I'm not sure. I think maybe it will get on the cloud, or I'm not sure.
Yes, sir. Even I have not tried how it gets archived. I'm not sure, sir. Maybe after this, or shall we just do for some 2 minutes
Yeah,
pause and?
yeah, we'll get connected. And uh, a small request for everybody, because this session, there was an issue while upgrading it to professional accounts. I request everybody to rejoin again for 40 after 40 minutes. This will get disconnected as such.
Okay, sir.
So is a screen visible?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, regarding the presentations and the other metric analysis, I was not able to complete, sir. Maybe by tomorrow evening I will make my presentation, sir.
Sure, madam. Yeah. Anybody else were able to do? See, you will be able to get a practical hang of these problems only if you are able to practice after the session. Else, it will be very difficult for you to cope up. Maybe these fundamentals are fine, but it will be very difficult for you to focus as the time goes by. Okay, so I'll highly recommend you to go back and practice the sessions. Right. So, coming back to the question that Anita ma'am was asking, right, on that the part of dehazing, how much time it takes for the dehazing as such, right? So, this MATLAB code, whatever Tangamani was running at that time when I was associated with him during my PhD days at IIT Madras, so it was taking around some few minutes, right? So it maybe 1 or 2 minutes for every image. That's not feasible, I know, but in my current company, I am also working on a similar problem, in fact, and we see that approximately we brought down the computational time to 2 seconds, and we are further improving it so that every frame processing happens within 1 by 30th of a second. Okay, that means almost like 0.003 uh, of a second. Yeah, so with that short duration, because most of these video systems, the video feed, the resolution will be like 30 frames per second, and that means every second there are 30 frames which are coming in, and then you need to ensure that you design your algorithms in such a way that uh, all those 30 frames will get processed within that 1 second itself, as soon as that feed is getting generated. Okay, and for which, yes, all these techniques which Tangamani was talking, yes, they will not be able to directly, you cannot use them, but however you can still use them based on under some constraints. And maybe on an offline, if it is okay for you to have an offline processing rather than online processing, then whatever techniques that Tangamani was talking about, they are really good, in fact. And but they cannot, but you cannot use them to deploy for a real time scenario where you need almost like processing of every frame. Processing happens in 1 by 30th of a second, so that is not possible with those methods. Okay, there are a different set of methods that you have to use.
Karthik sir.
Yes sir.
So that 30 frames per second means that is persistence of vision, no? That is for human eye, no, sir.
In general, sir, what happens is your video cameras, when you capture the videos are captured with 30 frames per second.
Oh, it is designed like that. Okay.
Yeah, your video cameras. Suppose, say you are taking a video from your mobile phone camera. Okay, you just see what is the frame rate with which it is capturing. After you capture the video,
Okay.
maybe you just go to the details of the video and see how many number of frames it is getting captured in every 1 second.
Or
Right.
maybe it may be the standard, sir.
Yeah, it's a standard.
Yeah.
Either 25 or 30. These are generally the standards.
Yeah.
And you can adjust that also. Suppose in few DSLR cameras, it gives you an option to uh, adjust the frame rate, like at what frame rate you want to capture at 120 frames per second or 30 frames per second. You can vary in between. It gives you on that option as well.
Okay.
Right. See, the whole idea behind asking all of you to attend this webinar is you should try to get a hang of all the different kinds of applications which are there in image processing and computer vision. Okay, you will not know when certain techniques in dehazing or deblurring, which Thangamani was talking today, will be useful for your own research at some point of time. Okay, so in a way that what do you say, that in that application point of view, you should try to attend as many as image processing and computer vision webinars, so that you should try to understand how that is getting mapped, right? So from the problem statement and how the mathematical equations are formed, and then how that mathematical equations are used in order to build the algorithms in order to restore those images, right? So there's a definite flow to it. You may not have completely understood what Thangamani spoke today, uh, but my suggestion is, even though you don't understand, I would highly recommend you all to attend these kind of webinars whenever possible. This will give you a feel as such. Any other queries that you had today in Thangamani's session? Vijay sir, was that explanation on dark channel clear? Did you had?
Yeah. So actually, is mentioned that that he has going to take the minimum value of the brightest.
Right. So we have done that focal operators, right? Do you remember? We at every pixel positions we defined a window.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. In the same way, what you need to do is, in the color image, you will have three matrices, right? R, G, and T.
Yeah.
Right. So at every pixel position, you define a window. Okay?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And within that window, whichever is the minimum pixel value, you just take that minimum
Yeah,
pixel
I
value
can.
and
Yes,
take
sir.
as an output.
Yeah, I can imagine, sir. I can imagine. Suppose if a particular pixel, if R value is 10 and sorry, R value is 80, and G value is 100, and B value is 110, I have to take the lowest R value 80.
80, correct. Within the window.
Yeah,
Like you should, because there are, suppose say you're taking 5x5 window. Okay, that means how many number of pixels you have in an RGB image? 25 cross 5 cross 5 into 3.
Yes, that's correct.
You have 75 pixels, and out of this 75 pixels,
So I have to
whichever
take
is the minimum value, you should take it.
But he mentioned two minimum, no, sir? Two minimum values.
One is for the color channels, and one is in the XY direction.
Oh, okay. After 3D to 2D conversion, we have to take the minimum.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So I think I can take that salient, my research area, no, sir, salient object detection. Till now, they have taken only the clear images. So I can take the foggy images and I can find out the salient object detection or something.
No, you can definitely take it. You can definitely.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
Right. So yeah, and any other queries that you have with respect to that session? Because since it was with respect to image processing, it makes very apt for us to discuss that as well.
Karthik sir, can I contact Thangamani sir?
Yeah, you can contact. But because he has a lot of restrictions with the company, he might not be able to guide you as such.
Okay, through you only I'm saying, sir.
No, you can directly contact, but I'm just alerting you because we planned something else today. In fact, we wanted to show this pedestrian detection and all these some autonomous vehicles applications also. He had a lot of restrictions with respect to copyright.
Okay.
He was very firm about it, so he didn't he was not very keen to share that information. Somehow I managed to request him to share at least this webinar today. And this essentially was his complete MS by research work at IIT Madras,
Yeah.
right? Modeling motion blur and foggy observation. And at the end, whatever publication he has shown, you can find all the details in that publication. In fact, in case if you are interested, you can go through that publication as well.
Sir, this time reduction and processing techniques, how that was reduced, sir? Like from the MATLAB execution to the other things. And recently I have heard about some accelerators. So how do they work actually, sir? But finally, in the hardware system, all this has to be implemented in hardware, no, sir?
Correct. Yes, ma'am. Correct. So recently, what I can share a recent approach that we have used in reducing the time. Right. So maybe we are in the process of it. Maybe if you can remind me in another 2 months, the article will get published, and then I can soon immediately share how did we reduce the time and everything.
Okay,
Right. In fact, we are even looking for transferring this code and implement on an practical hardware also. We call it as an edge platform. If you are aware of those terminologies, edge is something like a dedicated hardware for your algorithms, nothing else. Right. You just transfer your code, and then see one obvious way or the approach that we have taken to reduce the time is by converting it into Python. Right. So from MATLAB to Python, we have converted, and then we are able to see significant reduction in the time. Okay. Because MATLAB processing is very huge, and then it will be very difficult. Okay. And another problem with this dark channel prior based approach was it introduces some artificial color distortions.
Okay, sir.
And we had to remove those color distortions also while performing the task. Okay, so that is another thing. But anyways, just remind me after 2 months, the work will get published, and then I can share it.
Okay, sir.
Okay, because currently we are writing a paper for a biomedical application for the similar scenario where smoke will be there, and we are writing a paper for it, and we have almost finalized it. It's only that October 15th is deadline. Once the paper gets accepted, I can share it.
Okay, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem, and you're welcome. Good. So I hope you learned something today. And to answers Vijay's question on dark channel, see, dark channel is something the computation part you must have got some clarity, but physical meaning to it is by extracting the dark channel out of your color image, what happens is it gives you a sense of a perception of a depth. Okay, just by seeing an color image. As a human you can see it, but for a computer it feels like everything is at the in the same plane as such, because it's a 2D image. The depth information is lost. Okay, so by dark channel extraction, if you see therefore one of the trees image where he has shown, the nearest regions are given a color coding of black, while the farthest regions are given a color coding of white. Okay, and by seeing the color coding, now the computer will understand, saying that okay, these are the regions with having the black intensities, they are closer to the camera when compared to the regions with the uh, regions with the white intensities. Regions with the white intensities are far away from the camera. It's a relative distance, it's not an absolute distance. You cannot quantify the distance saying that okay, the black regions are at 3 meters distance or 4 meters distance. You cannot give an absolute number to it, but at least you have a relative idea saying that okay, which scene points in your image are closer to your camera, and which scene points are away from your camera. Okay, so you can get that information by using a dark channel. Actually, that is the reason why the dark channel was used. Right, is this clear, Vijay sir, the physical meaning?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay, good. So I would expect your presentations also kindly work on it. If not, you will be having a lot of issues as the time goes by. And right, so I'll still use the breast cancer data set today also. Okay, so today our agenda is to talk about something called precision recall curve. Okay, which is majorly used in many of the deep learning based systems, and it's right, so which is used in the majority of the deep learning based systems. And we will be having this precision recall curve analysis today. Okay, and that will be like an good performance indicator to evaluate the performance of your deep learning based or a machine learning based system. Okay, so this thing you should be clear about it. So let me go back and give a quick recap of uh, these metrics. True positives, and the true positives means an example can be said as a true positive, where if the predicted value, if you give the features of that particular example as an input to your system. Okay, okay, right. So if you give that example as an input to your system, okay, and you have a predicted value, okay, and if that predicted value, okay, is 1 and your true actual value is also 1, okay, that means the predicted value is 1 as well as actual value is 1, then you can categorize that particular example as a true positive. In the same way, if the predicted value is 0 and the actual value is 0, then you can classify it as a true negative. And if the predicted value is 1, the actual value is 0, then you can classify it as a false positive. Okay. And if the predicted value is 0 and the actual value is 1, then you can categorize it as a false negative. Okay. These are the four different components of your confusion matrix for a binary classification problem. Okay. So I have X comma Y. I'm just loading the breast cancer data set now. Okay, through this approach. And if I have to extract in the form of X and Y, the features in capital X and the ground truth values, the actual classification label in Y. So I mentioned I mentioned this parameter return underscore X underscore Y as true. Okay, and now I have a function called train test split, which essentially based on this random state and how much should be the size of the test data set. It will essentially split into training and testing. Okay, and I'm now fitting it by using a logistic regression function. I'm fitting the training data. Okay, so here one thing. Right, so let me comment this. There are multiple programming elements which I want to show you today, which are very useful as the time goes by. Right. Good. So you have the classification model into this variable called classification. Okay. So now one way is till now what we have used is we have used uh, classification dot predict, okay, of X underscore test and Y underscore test. Okay, and you have all the predicted values. Okay, I have removed that iterations, this thing, I fixed it as 10 here. Okay, for the sake of simplicity, sorry. And here, let's see. Right, till now, essentially, what do you say? I think there's an error. Is this correct? Right. Okay. So that means I'm getting 0.96808 as the classification score. Okay. This is basically an accuracy. Okay. And now what I want here is, okay, how many of you remember there was something called, we have defined something called h theta of x in the, while discussing the basics of logistic regression. We were using the value of h theta of x and checking if the h theta of x is greater than or equal to 0.5. Okay. If it is greater than or equal to 0.5, we are assigning what label to our output variable?
1.
We are assigning an output variable of 1. Okay.
1.
Label. And if h theta of x is less than 0.5, you are assigning an output label of 0. Right. So these are the two things that we were doing. And now if you see h theta of x value, since being it takes the form of a sigmoid, its value always lies between 0 and 1. Okay. And essentially you can also consider the physical meaning of h theta of x. You can also take it as a probabilistic value. Okay. Saying that the confidence with which you can say that you can clearly classify whether a particular training example is in class 1 or class 0. Okay. You can consider that as a probabilistic value also. Okay. And that means if h theta of x is 0.8, okay, and it say that with 80% confidence you can classify your input training example to class 1. Okay. But you can also say that with 20% confidence you can classify your input training example as class 0. Okay. Now with where is the so for classifying a given training example to class 1 or class 0, okay, where the confidence is high, right? So while assigning this training example to class 1, your confidence is much high. You can confidently say that, okay, this is with 80% confidence you are saying that your input training example can be classified as 1, when while you are saying with only with 20% confidence that your input is classified as 0, and that's how you take the final label as 1. Okay. Is this statement clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Good. So right, so this can be clearly explained in what do you say, for the digit classification task, and one of you were considering this digit classification task, right? So where you have an input of 32 cross 32 image, okay, and that image you have these are like binary images, okay, and you have digits in it varying from 0 to 9. Okay. And what happens is, and the output you will for this digit classification you will have 10 different outputs. Okay. And all these outputs are like h theta of x for that particular digit. Okay. And it doesn't mean that just because you have 0 in your input image, okay, only the h theta of x in the output variable corresponding to 0 will be getting activated and the rest will be disabled. No, it won't happen like that. Okay. You will have 10 different outputs. Okay. And you will have finite values for each of those 10 different outputs. Okay. And you will take whichever h theta of x value is high. Okay. And you will take the final classification label of your input image as that particular label. Okay. Are you able to visualize this digit classification, whatever I just said now?
Sir, then in that case, when we are doing the back propagation, then the weights of that corresponding classification only is increasing. The others also may be a finite value, but it may be lesser, no, sir.
What is it, man? Can you please come again?
No, sir. For the classification, now the highest output is what is the digit that it corresponds to. Correct, no, sir?
Correct.
So when we are doing the error decrementing using this gradient descent, then the chain for which highest output we got, that alone in all these iterations will be varying. Only those weights in this particular chain. Correct, no, sir?
No, ma'am. Actually, all the weights will be varying. Okay, because I'll tell you, because these H theta effects will not be just because your input image has 0 digit. Okay, it doesn't mean that the H theta effects for 1, 2, 3 up to 9 will be 0. They'll have some finite values. Okay, and during the training procedure, okay, what happens is if it has a finite value, right? If it has a finite value, then that means it has to brought down to 0 during the training process.
Okay.
You're understanding, Anita ma'am?
Yes, sir. That gradient. Yes, sir. That gradient reduction only. Sir, can you please repeat, sir, once again?
Yeah. Now, what happens is you have input image of 0. Okay. And you have output classification labels from 0 to 9. Okay. That means I have 9 different outputs there. Okay. And the final classification label you'll take as 0 only if H theta of x corresponding to 0 is highest when compared to the others.
Correct, sir.
Right. And during this comparative process, during the training process, what happens is initially itself, you will not have H theta of x corresponding to 0 as the highest.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Right. And during the training process, what you should do is you will do this gradient descent optimization in such a way that, okay, you increase the value of H theta of x corresponding to 0 as higher, while at the same time you are bringing the H theta of x for the other digits 0 towards 0.
Okay, sir. Sir, mathematically, where this will happen, like maximizing H theta x for 0 and minimizing for all the others digits?
No, in the gradient descent procedure only, while you are updating the values of theta, it will happen.
Okay, with respect to coefficients. Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
With respect to coefficients, because the thetas for your 0 will be different, and 1 will be different, 2 will be different, and 3 will be different, right? So, the thetas for the other digits will be adjusted in such a way that the H theta of x value will be lesser for them, while the H theta of x value for 0 will become higher and during this adjustment process.
Okay, sir. So then it totally depends on the number of iterations we keep training.
It depends on that. Generally, we train until convergence is reached. Okay, but you will also see different design constraints, right? So the training error and the testing error, how is it varying, and all those things. Also, there are several different design constraints. We will slowly look into each of them. What is how much time that we should train these systems?
Okay, sir.
Okay. So is the probability part clear? The confidence part that I was saying, Pratibha ma'am, Vijay sir, Junita ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So that digit is the multinomial classification, sir. Labels are from label 0 to 9.
Yeah, I think you can
breast cancer image dataset are of 2 types, class 1 and class 0.
Right, correct.
That is binary classification.
Correct.
That's so I have done with this breast cancer classification, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Good. So if everybody is what do you say, comfortable with that? Okay. Now let's see. We will look at the precision recall further now. Okay. Now we have this classification module. Okay. And if the once you have this classification module, you are either using it for prediction or you are using it for score computation that you are doing. Okay. And one other thing here you need to look at here is, okay, classification has something called okay. So just give me a second. I forgot that. I have written it here. Predict proba. See, one thing we know that is when you access the predict function, where is predict? Yeah, predict of X test. When you do this, what happens is it will give the output as a labels, whether as 1 or 0. Okay. But when you are using this predict proba function, what happens is it will give you an output of probabilities with what confidence it is telling you whether it's belong to class 0 or whether it belongs to class 1. Okay, so let me run this. So it gives me for every training example, what is the confidence with which you can classify the training example with into class 0 or class 1. Okay, let's see. Let's try to analyze this. This is also little important only for us. Okay, if you see here, the first training example, okay, it says 3.55284 into e power minus 1. That means 10 power minus 1. So this value here is 0.355. Okay, and the other value here is 0.644. Okay, that means with 35% confidence, okay, logistic regression is able to tell that the given first test example, okay, with 35% confidence, it can tell that it belongs to class 0, and with 64% confidence, okay, it says that it belongs to class 1. Okay, that means with a higher confidence level, it's able to say that it belongs to class 1. So it is the final label, it is assigned as class 1. Okay, and let's take another example. Okay, here if you see, with 99% confidence, it's saying that the second test example, it belongs to class 0. Okay, but with like 0.05, okay, it's almost like very negligible, 10 power minus 9. It's not even 0.05, 0.00000005. Okay, with almost with that percentage, okay, it's saying that it belongs to class 1. That means with a higher level of confidence, it's saying that it belongs to class 0 for second test example. Okay, so that is the reason the final label it has assigned 0. Okay, in the same way for the rest of the examples. Okay, is this part clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes.
Good. We will proceed further. Okay, and see, we have taken something called h theta of x, whether it's greater than or equal to 0.5. Okay, we give it to class 1. If it's less than 0.5, we give it to class 0. Okay, but where this 0.5 is coming from, if you consider this 0.5 as a threshold, okay, is it the best threshold or is there something else also? Okay, that is what we need to analyze now. That is what the today's session is all about. Okay, see, I might be talking only with respect to threshold of h theta of x that you use inside a logistic classification. Okay, but the same thing actually you can apply it for other problems also. There will be other design constraints. You will just assign some random value to it and you will start experimenting it. But you should understand more about on how you can really do that. Okay, that is what that is the analysis that we'll be doing over here. Okay, and correct. Okay.
Karthik sir,
Yes, madam.
suppose here we say that this is the probability based on which the model has used to classify. So wherever in the training errors code was different and where we are getting errors, then actually this probability, the way in which the model was calculated was insufficient like that we can take, sir.
Can you please come again, ma'am?
So like here, the target set based on is corely based on this confidence. That is what I'm saying, sir.
Correct.
Wherever we are seeing errors, like wherever mismatch we have seen, then this probability did not match to the actual thing.
No, that can be one reason. Okay, that can be one reason. That need not be an exact reason as such. That can be one reason.
Then how this probability is being calculated actually, sir? If
no, this 0.5 is the general probability value